Serena and Derek are known in their circle as the couple bound by pure hatred. Today he allows his secretary to provoke me. Tomorrow I send him to the hospital. Year after year of confrontation, we have brewed the deepest animosity. Until the girl he kept brought a child to kneel before me.
Welcome to listen to my full sweet love series novel. I'm the blogger and I'm Twilight's novel. Now let's start the main story.
Let go, Derek doesn't love you, she said. I stood on the staircase, looking down at the delicate figure kneeling on the floor. She held a boy in her arms, his face as delicate as carved jade, tears streaming down her pitiful face. Everyone in the city knows you and Derek are at odds. Why keep hating each other? Let him go and let yourself go too. When her sobs subsided, I descended gracefully. No matter how bad things are between Derek and me, I am still Mrs. Derek. To put it bluntly, even if Derek dies, I will be the one to mourn him. You won't even be allowed at the funeral. I settled comfortably on the sofa, casually observing her. Almond eyes, cherry lips, and dark hair cascading down. She was indeed pure and beautiful. And what identity do you have to advise me to step aside? The beautiful girl placed the child on the floor, her voice soft yet stubborn. This is Derek's child. He's 3 years old. What do you think my relationship with him is? I stared at the child for a moment, my heart skipping a beat before steadying. Youth is bold, daring to say and do anything. Why should I believe you? She wiped her tears, gazing tenderly at the child. I don't need you to believe me. I'm not here for you. Where is Derek? I need to see him. Why isn't he answering my calls? Are you keeping him from me? I idly admired my diamond-studded nails, contemplating how to send Derek back to the hospital. Yesterday's slap was too hard. I nearly broke my hand. Oh, he's in the hospital. I slapped him unconscious yesterday. He probably hasn't woken up yet. Would you like to try? She trembled under my cold gaze, clutching the child tightly, timid yet defiant. You wouldn't dare. If you touch me, Derek won't let you off. I chuckled softly. The last girl who demanded recognition from Derek said the same thing. She was so sure I wouldn't lay a hand on her. As she looked down in panic, I leaned closer, touching the child's cheek with a smile. Guess what happened to her? I didn't wait for her answer. She ended up in the hospital. Derek tried to stop me, and now he's lying there too. Since you found your way here, you should know what I'm capable of. The beautiful girl paled, half helpless, half terrified. I'm not like them. I looked down at her, a cold sneer escaping my throat. What's the difference? If I were to hit you now, do you think you'd end up in the same ward as them? She glanced at me in fear, clenched her fists, and lowered her head timidly. Seeing her genuine fear, I called Derek. Derek, still alive? Someone's looking for you and found me instead. His voice came through, light and flirtatious. Serena, thanks for not finishing me off. I'm alive, and the doctor says I can be discharged soon. Who dares disturb you? Send them away for me, and remember to pick me up after. I glanced at her. The calls connected. What's your name? Nora, she said. I continued speaking into the phone. She says her name is Nora. Oh, and she brought a child. Derek fell silent. After a few minutes, he spoke again, still casual. I don't know her. Send her away. Don't let her disturb you. Nora seemed on the verge of collapse, her face pale. That's impossible. Derek wouldn't treat me like this. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reluctantly left with the child. Once she was gone, I dropped my calm facade. My blood ran cold. Others might not know, but I could tell. Derek's hesitation meant he was lying. He knew Nora, and the child bore a striking resemblance to him. A suffocating sense of despair overwhelmed me. The child was 3 years old. We've been married for 4 years. He had a 3-year-old child. I too had a child once. If he had been born, he would have been 3 by now. But his timing was unfortunate. It was the year Derek and I were at our worst. That year, Derek had just rescued me from debt collectors, but I felt no gratitude. After all, he was the one who orchestrated my family's bankruptcy. Derek hated me just as much. At 18, his family went bankrupt because of my father's betrayal, and his parents jumped to their deaths. That same August, His older brother returned from the US to handle affairs but died in a car accident. In less than a year, he lost 3 family members. So he hated my father for causing his parents' and brothers' deaths, and he hated me. I hated him for humiliating me, hated my father, hated everyone. But I couldn't bring myself to hate the child. The day I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to abort him. I didn't want his birth to carry the weight of our shared hatred. I didn't tell anyone and quietly scheduled the procedure. As I lay on the operating table, Derek burst in. Tears filled his eyes. I had never seen him so distraught. He knelt before me, trembling, his voice shaking. "Serena, I beg you. Don't do this. Don't do this to me. I've lost too much already. Do you want me to lose another?" I relented and kept the child. Our relationship began to mend, and just as I thought things were improving, Iris showed up. Derek's sister-in-law, pale and with a slight baby bump, confronted me. "Serena, your father took 3 lives from the Derek's family. How can you still stay here?" She was emotionally unstable and pregnant, so I didn't want to argue. I called Derek to handle it. But as I reached for the phone, Iris lunged at me, screaming and hitting me. In the struggle, she pushed me down the stairs. The pain was excruciating, and I soon lost consciousness. When I woke up, they told me the child was gone, and I could never have children again. I gasped in agony, tears streaming down my face. "What about Iris?" Derek avoided my gaze, gripping my hand tightly. "Serena, I don't care about having children. I've sent Iris abroad. I promise she'll never appear before you again." I understood. He wouldn't seek justice for me. He sent her away before I woke up, afraid I'd harm her. Of course, she was his sister-in-law. How could he punish her? But I wanted justice. The child was in my womb. If I didn't fight for him, who would? I ripped out the 4 and despite my weakened state, smashed everything in the room. "Derek, I won't let her get away with this," I hissed. At my worst, I even thought of making Iris pay with her life, but the thought quickly faded. Amid the wreckage, Derek silently met my gaze. He smiled, his handsome face unable to hide the malice in his words. "Serena, your family owes mine 3 lives. Iris lost her husband a year into their marriage because of your father. What do you plan to do to her?" I was stunned and slapped him. "Get out." Derek left without looking back, and our relationship hit rock bottom again. But that night as I slept, I felt someone tuck me in and cold droplets fall on my face. Derek's tears. After he left, I quietly followed him. I found him kneeling on the balcony, crying silently under the moonlight. It was a soundless, utterly despairing cry. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. I didn't know who to hate anymore. Now, it seems I still hate him. I hate him for giving me hope and then despair, for making promises he couldn't keep. I leaned on the sofa, tears streaming uncontrollably. A WeChat notification sounded. It was Derek. "Serena, no need to pick me up. I have work to do." I wiped my tears and instructed the butler. "Nora and the child can't have gone far. Bring them back." I wanted to confront Derek with them. At the hospital room door, I had Nora and the child wait outside while I entered alone. Derek was getting dressed and looked surprised to see me. "Serena, what are you doing here?" He wrapped his arms around me, his warm breath brushing my ear. "What? Worried I'm not hurt enough?" "Here to finish the job." I smiled and nodded without answering. I pressed hard on his wound, watching him wince in pain, my eyes icy. "Your injuries haven't healed. Who are you in such a hurry to see?" Derek smiled faintly. "No one. Just work. I'm leaving." He brushed past me and strode away. As he turned the doorknob, I spoke. "No need to go. They're here with me." Derek turned, his expression chilling. "Serena, what did you do to them?" I sneered. "What's wrong? Can't keep up the act? You said you didn't know her." I sighed deliberately, pacing slowly. "Derek, she's not as tough as your secretary. Her tears could flood the city." Watching his face darken, I leaned in close. "And that child? He's crying so hard." Almost as soon as I finished speaking, Derek's hand was around my throat. "Serena." He seemed tense, veins bulging as he choked me, his voice cold and low. What did you do to them? I struggled and slapped him, drawing blood. Derek's eyes burned with dark fury as he glared at me. Serena, you'd better pray they're unharmed. I grabbed a water glass and smashed it, the shards cutting his hand. Of course they're fine. Derek, she knelt in our home begging me to let go. How could I harm her? I opened the door and pushed Nora and the child toward Derek, my heart breaking but still smiling. Here, meet your son. Derek instinctively stepped back. He's not my. Before he could finish, Nora burst into tears, throwing herself into his arms. Derek, I was so scared. I thought I'd never see you again. The child clung to Derek's leg, crying softly. Daddy, I'm scared. That lady is scary. Whatever Nora whispered to him, Derek stared at the child for a moment before tears fell. He hugged the boy tightly. How strange, the always composed Derek crying over a child. It reminded me of the night I lost our child, when he also wept. His tears are so cheap. The hospital's antiseptic smell wasn't unpleasant, but it was bitter, cutting like a knife when inhaled. Watching their little family, I felt bored and turned to leave. Nora grabbed me, tears streaming as she knelt before me again. Miss Serena, Anand is so young. He needs his father. Please, let them be together. I glanced at Derek, mocking. Derek, should I make room for your little family? He froze, reaching for my hand, but Nora wailed even louder. Derek, do you know what the kids at school call Anand? They call him a bastard. He's not well, and he keeps asking me where his daddy is. How can you let them treat him like this? Derek slowly withdrew his hand, his eyes red as if about to cry. Serena, I'm sorry. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. Fine. Congratulations on your happy little family. Derek reached to wipe my tears, his expression stern. Serena, you're still Mrs. Derek. That won't change. Just keep Anand with you. I raised an eyebrow. You want me to raise him? To be his stepmother? Derek, do you think I'm some kind of saint? Aren't you afraid I'll harm him? Derek looked weary, helpless. Serena, you can't have children. Can't you treat Anand as your own? I slapped him hard, my chest aching, my voice trembling. Derek, you're a monster. He knew exactly how I lost our child and why I could never have another. Yet he wanted me to raise his lover's child as my own. A deliberate stab to the heart. Derek took the slap, tilting his head slightly, his tone cold and cruel. Serena, you can deal with anyone else as you please. But don't touch Nora or Anand. They're fragile and can't handle your temper. I swallowed my tears, sneering. What if I insist on making their lives miserable? Derek held the child, not looking back, his voice indifferent. Serena, don't forget. Your family owes me 3 lives. Your sister is still in the hospital, waiting for me to arrange her surgery. A metallic taste rose in my throat. Now I understood. People really can vomit blood. For Nora, he used my sister against me. I didn't want to keep tormenting each other endlessly. After thinking it through, I called a familiar number. Mr. Johnson, can you check how much time is left on the agreement Derek and I signed 4 years ago? That agreement was something even Derek had probably forgotten. Back then, after his parents and brother died suddenly, he hated my family to the core. For 3 years, he endured in silence, gritting his teeth to rebuild the company and deliver a fatal blow to my family. So my family fell. My father's lifelong work was ruined, and he was buried in debt. Unable to cope, my father went mad the day after debt collectors came threatening. He became restless, smashing things at home, only occasionally lucid. I didn't care much, but my sister Lillian had a congenital heart condition and couldn't handle stress. I used the last of my money to send him to a mental institution. Then came the debts, crushing me. Debt collectors came again with thugs, taking anything valuable and destroying the rest. I knelt amidst the broken pieces, numb to the pain. Your father owes so much. If he can't pay, his daughter will. It was laughable. When my father was successful, my sister and I never benefited. Our living expenses came from our mother. Now that he was mad, all his pampered mistresses and illegitimate children fled, leaving my sister and me to atone for his sins. As the debt collector's baton came down, I shielded Lillian with my body. It was raining that day when Derek arrived. With one word, he stopped the debt collectors. He looked down at me, taking in my wretched state. Serena, how does it feel to lose everything? 3 years ago I was just as pathetic. Back then, I hated your family to the bone. He stood there in his tailored suit, watching my sister and me shiver in the rain, hatred in his eyes. But it's not enough. Serena, you haven't felt true despair yet. I held Lillian tightly, thinking to myself, it's different. 3 years ago, when he knelt in the rain, clutching his parents' ashes, I was by his side. Now the tables had turned. He stood above me, humiliating me to the fullest. Derek knelt on one knee, meeting my gaze, his expression cold. He made an unexpected demand. I can pay your debts, but you have to marry me. Through the drizzle, I could barely see him clearly. Or perhaps, since his family's bankruptcy 3 years ago, I had never truly seen him. Back then, I was consumed by guilt, but I couldn't change my father's decisions. I begged my father to help Derek, but he slapped me twice. Serena, if we don't destroy him now, he'll come back for revenge. I'm your father. How can you side with an outsider? With my face swollen, I went to Derek and gave him all the money I had. Derek, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Derek didn't take the money. He looked at me deeply, his voice hoarse. Serena, let's not see each other again. I'm afraid I won't be able to stop myself from hating you. For the next 3 years, no matter how I tried to reach him, he ignored me. We became strangers. Raindrops stung my eyes, pulling me back to the present. I forced a smile. Derek, there's a sea of blood between us. You swore you'd never let my family go. And now you're saying you want to marry me? I paused, letting the rain mix with my tears. Don't you think that's ridiculous? Derek shielded me from the rain, his cold breath brushing my ear. Exactly. Because there are 3 lives between us, I want to keep you by my side and torment you day and night. Serena, we're bound till death. I clenched my fists, but before I could refuse, Lillian in my arms began to tremble violently. Her condition had worsened. Derek's icy gaze locked onto me. You might not care, but what about your sister? How long can she last? Panicked, I grabbed his sleeve, swallowing my pain and tears. Fine. I'll marry you. Save Lillian. So Derek and I signed a marriage contract. I would marry him, and he would pay my debts and save my sister. But we argued over the contract's duration. I insisted on 4 years. Derek initially refused, but I told him, do you really think a piece of paper is enough to keep me by your side? My words struck a chord. A contract could be broken, but my sister's life and my father's fate were ties I couldn't sever. I gave myself 4 years, and Derek 4 years. After that, our marriage would end. I'd have enough money to save Lillian and take her away. As for my father, Derek could do as he pleased. Mr. Johnson's words brought me relief. Miss Serena, the contract has expired. Good. Mr. Johnson, please draft a divorce agreement and send it to Derek. I don't want anything from him. I composed myself and went to the best private hospital in the city, where Lillian was being treated. When she saw me, her pale face lit up with a sweet smile. Sis, you're here. Where's Derek? Why didn't he come with you this time? Lillian was 6 years younger than me. I'd watched her grow up and knew she cared for me deeply. If she found out about Derek and me, it would only worsen her condition, so I kept the divorce a secret. I brushed her stray hair aside, pretending everything was fine. He's busy with a new project at work. He asked me to apologize and promised to bring your favorite cake next time. Lillian leaned into me, smiling. It's okay. I'm just happy you're here. I held her cold hands, savoring the moment of peace. Suddenly, she reached up and touched my eyes, her voice soft. Sis, your eyes are wet. Have you been crying? Before I could answer, she gently covered my mouth, her dark eyes meeting mine. If it's not Derek, then it's me. Sis, is my condition getting worse? I couldn't bear to see her like this. I'd rather she cried and said she didn't want to die than watch her suppress everything and put on a brave face. I forced a smile, holding back tears. Don't be silly. My eyes just hurt. You'll live a long life, Lillian. Don't lie to me. When I was born, the doctors said I wouldn't survive. Then they said I might live to 18, And I was happy. I got 18 extra years. She was comforting me, but I couldn't stop my tears. My throat felt blocked. I couldn't speak, only shaking my head silently. A calm voice spoke for me. Listen to the doctors, rest well, and you'll be fine. I looked up to see a man in a white coat, his face handsome behind gold-rimmed glasses. It was Fred, Lillian's attending physician. Lillian greeted him warmly. Dr. Fred. Good afternoon. Please comfort my sister. Miss Serena, let's talk outside, Fred said. I glanced at Lillian once more before following him out. Fred hadn't always been Lillian's doctor. He had just returned from studying abroad, highly sought after by top hospitals. He was an expert in cardiology, but when I first approached him, he politely declined. I thought it was hopeless, but the next day, he became Lillian's doctor. Fred handed me a tissue, his voice calm but slightly hoarse. Don't cry. She'll be fine. My hands were still shaking, and I couldn't even hold the tissue. Tears fell in large drops. Will she really be okay, Dr. Fred? Fred leaned down slightly, wiping my tears with a gentle touch. She will. Don't cry, or your sister will worry. But I couldn't calm down, choking back sobs. Dr. Fred, is there nothing you can do? Can no one save her? Fred sighed, his expression softening. Lillian is stronger than you think. She's been looking forward to her 18th birthday, wanting to give you a surprise. The thought of Lillian, only 17 and never reaching 18, made me cry harder. Seeing me in tears, Fred gently pointed to his shoulder. If you need to, you can lean on me for a while. I hesitated but finally rested my head on his shoulder, my tears soaking his coat. Serena, what are you doing? A cold, angry voice interrupted us. I turned to see Derek standing in the corner, his eyes dark with fury. He strode over, grabbing my arm, his voice low and harsh. Serena, I'm asking you, what are you doing? His icy gaze shifted to Fred, his teeth clenched. And who is he? Derek's grip was tight, hurting my wrist. I tried to pull away, but he held on. Answer me. Serena, is he why you want a divorce? Fred stepped in, his usually gentle face now stern. Let her go. Derek's expression turned even colder as he pulled me closer, his voice filled with barely contained rage. Who do you think you are? Until I sign the divorce papers, she's my wife. You have no right to interfere. A soft voice broke the tension. Sis, Derek, are you and Dr. Fred arguing? Lillian had heard the commotion and came out, looking at the three of us. I quickly wiped my tears and pushed Derek away, steadying Lillian and pressing on the bruise from her fore. Why did you come out? You haven't finished your medication. We're just discussing your condition with Dr. Fred. Go back inside. It's windy out here. Lillian glanced at me, then at Derek, whispering. Sis, are you sure you're not fighting? Derek looked so upset. I turned away, pinching Derek subtly to remind him to control his expression. Maybe work isn't going well. Don't worry about it. Let's get you back to finish your 4. Derek forced a smile. It's nothing. Go back with your sister. If you catch a cold, she'll blame me. As I helped Lillian back to her room, Nora appeared. She stood at the door, tears in her eyes, looking past me at Derek, holding the little boy's hand. My heart skipped a beat, fearing she might cause a scene. I tried to push her away, but before I could, Nora collapsed to the floor, dragging the child down with her. As I reached to help him, the boy started crying. It hurts. I want Daddy. Nora knelt at my feet, kowtowing repeatedly until her forehead bled. Miss Serena, take your anger out on me, but don't hurt Anan. I beg you. I don't care if I die. Just let Anan live. Derek pushed me aside, rushing to help them. When he saw Nora's bleeding forehead, his face turned cold. Serena, if you're angry, take it out on me. Lillian swayed, leaning on me. Sis, who is she? Why is she kowtowing to you? I covered her face, forcing myself to stay calm. It's nothing. Just a friend in trouble asking for help. Let's go back. I glared at Derek, speaking slowly. My sister's health is fragile. Don't let outsiders disturb her. Handle this for me. Lillian looked confused as Fred and I guided her back to her room. Just as we were about to enter, Nora broke free from Derek and grabbed Lillian's pant leg. Tears and blood streamed down her face as she pleaded desperately. "Miss Serena, please talk to your sister. Derek and I love each other. Even if she can't accept me. Anan is only 3. He needs his father. Please let him live." I couldn't cover Lillian's ears in time. Lillian stiffened, her face pale as she looked up at me in shock. "Sis, is that child Derek's?" Before I could explain, she fainted in my arms. I felt her weak heartbeat, fearing I might collapse too. "Lillian! Lillian, wake up!" I watched helplessly as she was rushed into the emergency room, collapsing to the floor, my heart shattered. Lillian had always been sensitive, unable to handle even the sound of firecrackers. I couldn't imagine her pain now. Fred held me firmly, comforting me. "Don't worry. She'll be fine." Derek looked uneasy, tentatively reaching for my hand. "Serena, don't worry." Seeing him reignited my hatred, giving me the strength to stand. I slapped him hard, a metallic taste in my mouth. "Derek, you knew Lillian couldn't handle stress, yet you let Nora cause a scene. You're disgusting." A red mark quickly appeared on Derek's face, but he didn't retaliate, watching me cautiously. I pushed him aside and approached Nora. Now she was scared, cowering in the corner. I grabbed her face and slapped her twice. She cried out in pain. "Derek, save me." I stepped on her hand, my eyes blazing. "You were so eloquent earlier. Keep talking now." The little boy charged at me. "Bad lady, don't hurt mommy." I shoved him aside. Derek quickly caught him, his voice icy. "Serena, that's enough. Enough." I screamed, tears streaming down my face. "It's not enough. I want her to feel the same pain as Lillian." I closed my eyes. "I won't let her off easy, Derek. You'd better hide her well." Derek's expression darkened as he helped Nora up, his voice devoid of warmth. "Serena, are you really going to make her pay with her life? Even if something happens to Lillian, you can't blame Nora entirely. Your sister wasn't going to live past 18 anyway." His words cut deep, each one a dagger to my heart. I nearly fainted, wanting to drag them all down with me. I took a deep breath, my voice weary. "Derek, I'll give you 2 choices. First, sign the divorce papers, and I'll let her go. Second, don't sign, and I'll make sure Nora and that child suffer." I met Derek's cold gaze. "You know I have nothing left but Lillian. I don't know what I'm capable of." Derek hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, I'll sign. Just leave them alone." The pain was unbearable. To Derek, Lillian's life meant less than Nora's, less than that child's. My suffering was just a tantrum to him. I remembered 17-year-old Derek smiling at me. "Serena, when you cry, my heart aches." The love of our youth had been consumed by hatred. We could never go back. Before leaving with Nora, Derek glanced at Fred standing by my side. "Serena, do you think he'll put up with your mood swings like I did?" "Don't regret this." I replied with one word. "Leave." I stayed by the emergency room door, watching the light go out, trembling as I clutched Fred's sleeve. "Lillian will be okay, right?" Fred helped me up, his voice gentle. "She'll be fine." I braced myself and entered the room. Lillian lay pale on the operating table, her breathing faint. I gently held her hand, tears of relief falling. "Lillian, look at me." She opened her eyes, an oxygen mask on her face, and weakly patted my hand. "Sis, don't cry. I'm not in pain." The doctor pulled me aside, regret in his voice. "She's awake now, but her heart won't last much longer. Prepare yourself." I nearly collapsed but forced myself to stay strong. Lillian was moved back to her room. She seemed to know the outcome, forcing a weak smile. "Sis, don't cry." In the following days, Lillian often slept, only waking occasionally to talk to me. I held back my tears, not wanting to upset her. On her last day, she woke for a few hours, her face less pale than before. She smiled and beckoned me over. "Sis, come here. I have something for you." In her pale hands was a jar of paper stars. She blinked playfully. "Sis, there are 360 stars here. Whenever you miss me, open one. Each has a message from me." Tears streamed down my face as I hugged her, sobbing. "Don't leave me. You're all I have. She touched me gently. The stars will keep you company. Sis, when I'm gone, don't bury me. I'm scared of the dark. Scatter my ashes in the sea. I've never seen the ocean. As she closed her eyes, I held her hand. Okay, I won't let you be afraid. After Lillian passed, Fred stayed by my side, helping with the arrangements. We collected her ashes, and I broke down again, seeing her reduced to a small urn. Following her wishes, I scattered some of her ashes in the sea. The rest I made into a pendant, placing it in the star jar to keep her with me forever. It had been half a month since then. Derek had called countless times, but I ignored him. I never wanted to see him again. When he couldn't find me, he waited at the mental institution where my father was. As I paid my father's fees, Derek stopped me. He looked weary, his eyes filled with hope. Serena, Lillian can be saved. I found a retired doctor in Germany. He can help her. I looked at him calmly. Lillian's gone. The light in Derek's eyes dimmed. He trembled as he spoke. Serena, I'm sorry. I was angry and said things I didn't mean. It's all my fault. Please don't look at me like that. I shook my head, repeating his words from years ago. Derek, let's not see each other again. I'm afraid I won't be able to stop myself from hating you. Regret flashed in Derek's eyes as he slowly released my hand, his voice hoarse. Serena, if I told you the truth, would you forgive me? Without waiting for my answer, he continued. Annan isn't my child. Nora and I have no relationship. I looked at him skeptically as he smiled bitterly, a tear falling on my hand. You thought he looked like me because he's my brother's child. Nora is his aunt. Iris's sister. 3 years ago, Iris died in childbirth abroad. Nora took the child in. I realized then, Nora and Iris were sisters. How had I not seen it before? One took my child, the other hastened Lillian's death. They truly were sisters. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Derek lowered his head. Nora said and shows signs of autism. If I didn't act as his father, it would worsen his condition. And I was afraid you'd take your anger out on him if you knew he was Iris's child. In the end, he chose to protect Annan at my expense. I nodded, answering his earlier question with malice. I won't forgive you unless you die. Without waiting for his reaction, I walked away. Later, I saw Nora again, battered and kneeling at the door of my new home. She was covered in bruises, her eyes swollen and hands bloodied, pleading weakly. Miss Serena, I was wrong. Please make Derek help me. I can't take it anymore. From her fragmented explanation, I learned the truth. Nora had been reckless abroad, offending many wealthy heirs. When Iris was alive, she cleaned up Nora's messes. After Iris's death, Nora caused serious trouble, stealing someone's boyfriend and being hunted down. That's why she rushed to Derek with the child. Her pursuers had tracked her here, but Derek abandoned her, watching coldly as they beat her severely. Nora wept, no longer pretending to be delicate. Miss Serena, please forgive Derek. Make him stop them. They'll kill me. I kicked her away, my voice cold. Come out. Derek emerged from the shadows, half his face hidden, his expression unreadable. Serena, I've cut ties with Nora. Are you happy now? I studied his desolate appearance, sneering. My answer remains the same, Derek. I'll only be happy when you're dead. Derek looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. All right. He had Nora dragged away. Rumor had it she was left on the street with broken legs, barely alive, until her family came to take her and the child. The next time I heard of Derek, Fred and I were in the mountains, praying for Lillian's peaceful afterlife. As we left the mountains, Mr. Johnson called, his voice grave. Serena, Derek has committed suicide. He left a will, transferring all his assets to you. I was stunned, unable to speak for a long time. Mr. Johnson added, he also left you a suicide note. Fred gently patted my shoulder. Serena, do you want to read it? Derek's note was brief. Serena, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Truthfully, I've wanted to die for 7 years. But thinking of you kept me alive. I thought I hated you, but seeing you cry hurt me too. I both hate you and can't live without you. Serena, I'm sorry about the child and Lillian. I know you'll never forgive me, and I can't forgive myself either. Serena, go live the life you want. I stared at the note, expressionless, but water stains appeared on the paper. Fred caught my tears, gently patting my back. Serena, it's over. A star from Lillian's jar fell out of my pocket. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was written, "Sis, all troubles will pass. Look forward, okay?" I broke down sobbing. Yes, it's over. From now on, I'll live fully, carrying Lillian's hopes with me.